Our families shape who we are. Whether or not we like the result, it's just true. Parenting is so important in our world. I think it's important to support mothers and fathers in every way that we can. I wrote Co-Parenting from the Inside Out because I found co-parenting, that is sharing the parenting of my sons with their dad after we divorced, hard and lonely. I didn't realize exactly how alone I felt until about 2 years in. I ran across 3 pages in a book, and the book wasn't about co-parenting, but the woman talked about her experience as she was helping her grown sons get ready to take part in the remarriage ceremony of their father. Reading her words had such an impact on me. It was like rain falling in the desert. I thought, I'm not the only person who's had these mixed up, bittersweet feelings. I'm maybe normal, and it might not be normal, but at least I have company. There are other people in the world doing this. My relief and my joy in reading that were so strong, I thought, I want more stories like this. And I looked and there were none. So I decided I would do that myself. I would collect the stories and put them out in the world when the time permitted. So my sons were 5 and 8 when we started co-parenting, and they're now 31 and 34. So it took a long time to get to this, but I'm still happy at the result. Co-parenting after divorce brings together 2 threads. One of them is the challenging business of raising children interdependently with somebody that you're not with. And the other one is the divorce process itself and all the painful feelings that can go with that. In fact, painful feelings might be a bit of an understatement. Most people I interviewed experienced fury, devastating grief, and ongoing fear for the lives of their children and themselves. I was no exception. Though my story is one of the easier ones in the book, for a couple of years I moved in a haze of hurt and anger, and I wasn't sure that I would ever come out of that. Even with individual counseling and some group support, it was anxious and scary. So in terms of how John, my ex-husband, and I did it, we shared the boys half-time each week in his home and my home. We kept stressing to them that we would both love them both forever and that they wouldn't lose either of us. But it was very hard on them as they had to make the shift. John and I navigated the separation agreement with a minimum of legal involvement, which I'm very grateful for. We were civil, generally, and if we had arguments, we were more or less able to keep them out of the kids' hearing. From my perspective, there was a lot of that duck, along the surface and this paddling underneath of all the feelings and the things that didn't need to see the light of day. We were able to get through a few years of stress and intensity to a place of a more calm place, and the boys grew up to be good men, to my relief and gratitude. The moms and dads who were co-parenting that I interviewed had an enormous range of experience, from marvelously cooperative, awesomely. I thought, wow, how can you do that? So beautifully cooperative, to bitter, protracted divorces that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. I'd like to read you a part of Pauline's experience, who was one of the moms. Pauline and Lionel had separated when their children were 7, 10, and 11 years old, 3 years before she spoke with me. Lionel had been verbally abusive and finally kicked Pauline out of their house. She said, I was excited to get out. I've been looking for a way to leave and didn't know how to. Not sure what else to do, Pauline agreed when Lionel suggested that they do the divorce themselves. She soon regretted her decision. She ended up with only 25% time with her children. and had to pay child support instead of the 50-50 time split she wanted. Her challenge was co-parenting with someone who did not respect her. It was hard to accept that. It seemed so unfair. She said, "My ex didn't respect me or my rules. He told our mutual friend that I'm the babysitter, that I pay him money." I wondered if there was any point trying to communicate with him, and yes, I felt anger. Her helplessness came to a head one day when her 12-year-old son was sick at his dad's house. He phoned Pauline asking if she could come over and bring him some 7-Up. She had to say to him, crying, "I'm sorry, I can't. It's Dad's day." She called Lionel to see if she could go over, and he said, "No, Pauline, this is how divorce works." So she got off the phone and cried for an hour, but that experience sparked growth in her. She said, "I started thinking that we needed to do actual co-parenting. I needed to empower myself. I took co-parenting classes, I read books, and I started therapy. That was a pivotal time. I finally began letting go of trying to control my ex at his house. My mantra now is, I know my ex loves my kids and they'll be okay with him. I have to let go." And one other piece on that, Pauline learned to manage her anger at Lionel differently. Before, I used to eat, call my parents and cry. I would go home and stuff myself with food. Then I went back to school, began exercising, and started my business. Now I tell myself I'm going to love my children more than I hate my ex. I'll get on the treadmill and walk for an hour sometimes just to walk it off. So you can sense the